Welcome back to Inherited Dawn, a One Piece podcast. We are breaking down the classics, one chapter at a time.
Today, we are on chapter 48, Don't Die.
And what a title, because we just learned what it takes to survive on the Grand Line, and it is absolutely brutal. 50 ships, 5,000 men, a whole pirate armada gone in a week.
And all of it, apparently at the hands of a single man. Zoro's entire reason for living just entered the story.
If you want to be right here with us when we find out what happens when a man's destiny literally sails up to his front door, make sure you follow the show wherever you get your podcasts. You are not going to want to miss this.
Let's get into it. The chapter opens right where we left off, with Don Krieg facing down Zeff.
And Krieg knows exactly who he is. He calls him out, Red Leg Zeff. And he's not impressed. He looks at Zeff's peg leg and just laughs, saying he's not a chef by choice. He's a chef because it's all he can do now.
That's such a specific kind of cruelty. It's not just an insult, it's an attack on Zeff's entire identity. He's trying to reframe Zeff's life as a story of failure. We've seen arrogant villains before. Captain Morgan was a tyrant who thought he was the law. Buggy was a showman who couldn't stand being upstaged. But this feels different. Krieg is looking at a legend, someone who accomplished what he failed to do, and his immediate instinct is to tear that legacy down, to reduce it to a sad story of disability and forced retirement.
He's a bully, a big, loud, gold-plated bully. He can't stand the idea that someone is better than him, so he has to find a crack, a weakness, and just hammer it. But the story he tells is anything but a failure. Zeff was a pirate captain who fought only with his legs to protect his hands for cooking. His kicks could pulverize bedrock. They left imprints on solid steel.
The epithet itself, red leg, comes from his legs being dyed in the blood of his enemies. That is such a powerful, visceral image. It tells you everything about his fighting style and his ferocity. It's not a glamorous name like Gold Roger. It's a name you earn, not one you give yourself. It speaks to a reputation that precedes him even after all these years away from the sea.
This guy was an absolute monster on the sea, a captain and the chef. He was the full package. Think about the discipline that takes, to be the leader, the one making the hard calls, and also the one in charge of morale, of keeping the crew fed and healthy. That's a super rare combination. And you see Sanji just standing there, completely floored. You can feel the disconnect. Sanji has lived with this man, argued with him, probably resents him on some level, but he's also built his entire fighting style in Zeff's image. And in this moment, he's realizing the shitty old geezer he knows is a living legend, who other pirates still speak of with a mix of fear and awe. It's like finding out your grumpy grandfather was a war hero. It recontextualizes their entire relationship in a single panel.
And Zeff knows it. He's trying to play it cool, though. He says he still has his hands, and that's all he needs to cook. Classic Zeff, deflecting, acting like it's no big deal, but Krieg just keeps twisting the knife.
He doesn't let up. He's a psychological fighter in this moment. He knows Zeff's weak point isn't his strength, it's his past.
He lays out his theory. Zeff was in a shipwreck and he had to sacrifice his own leg to survive. That's why he had to retire. That's why he's stuck here. He's basically calling him a washed-up relic.
He's taking this story of incredible survival and framing it as a pathetic story.
And then he gets to the real point. He knows Zeff went to the Grand Line and came back alive. He wants the logbook.
Of course he does. That's the ultimate prize for a coward like Krieg. He doesn't want to earn the knowledge. He wants a cheat sheet. He thinks a book can save him from the horrors he just ran from. This is such a fundamental misunderstanding of what the Grand Line is and what an adventure is. He thinks it's a test you can study for.
A pirate's log from a successful Grand Line voyage would be one of the most valuable items in the East Blue. It's a record of survival against impossible odds. It would contain information on weather patterns, safe routes, dangerous islands, maybe even encounters with the Marines or other powerful figures. It's a literal treasure map, but the treasure is survival itself. For someone like Nami, it would be a holy grail. For Krieg, it's a shortcut.
And you see Luffy's ears just perk right up. The Grand Line? He's immediately invested. He sees a veteran, someone who's actually been there. Everyone else is focused on the tension, the threat of a fight, but Luffy zeroes in on the one thing that matters to him, the adventure. He's not intimidated by Zeff's legend. He's excited by it.
Zeff confirms it. He has the logbook, but he tells Krieg he's not handing it over. He calls it a memento of his former life. And that word memento is so important. It's not a tool. It's not a weapon. It's a part of his soul. It contains the memories of his crew, his triumphs, his failures, and, as we'll come to suspect, his greatest loss and his greatest sacrifice.
I love that. It's not just a tool for him, it's his history. It's the proof of everything he went through, the good and the bad. And he's not giving that legacy to a chump like Krieg. It would be like letting someone else write the last chapter of his story, and it would be a bad one.
This, of course, means nothing to Krieg. If Zeff won't give it to him, he'll take it by force. He says his only mistake was a lack of information.
He's so arrogant. He thinks a book is the difference between total annihilation and success on the world's most dangerous sea. He has no clue. He saw the monster and he thinks a map will let him tiptoe around it. The problem wasn't that he didn't have a map, it's that he wasn't strong enough, in will or in power, to be on that sea in the first place.
He then declares he's not just taking the log, he's taking the Baratie too. He wants a new flagship, and it's almost poetic in a twisted way. He lost his fleet, so he's come to the East Blue to take a new one, starting with the ship of the man who actually conquered the sea he fled from. It's an act of parasitic envy.
And that is the absolute last straw for the fighting cooks. They've been on the sidelines this whole time, simmering, but you don't threaten their home. They all charge him at once. These aren't just Zeff's employees, they're his crew. The Baratie is their ship, and Zeff is still their captain.
It doesn't go well. Krieg just brushes them aside with his own attacks. He's clearly on another level from anyone else in the restaurant right now, besides maybe Zeff in his prime. Oda establishes the power hierarchy very quickly. The cooks are tough, but Krieg is a Grand Line level threat, even in his weakened state. He has armor, he has weapons, he has experience. The cooks just have frying pans and fury.
He just laughs at them, this giant armored goon, and starts monologuing about reassembling his fleet, getting the log, finding the One Piece, and becoming the greatest pirate of the era.
And that's the trigger word.
That's the one. Luffy, who has been sitting quietly this whole time, just stands up. No fanfare, no big dramatic pose. He just looks at Krieg and tells him that he's the one who will be king of the pirates.
The tonal shift is immediate. The entire focus of the chapter snaps to Luffy. One moment, it's about Krieg's overwhelming force and Zeff's legendary past. The next, it's about this kid in a straw hat making a simple, declarative statement. The cooks are all worried, looking at this skinny kid challenging the man who just wiped the floor with them. They see him as a child picking a fight with a giant.
But my favorite part is Zoro. He doesn't even get up. He just leans back in his chair next to Usopp and casually asks Luffy if he needs a hand. This is everything. This is the whole dynamic right here. It's not just confidence in Luffy, it's a complete lack of concern about the enemy. Krieg has just demonstrated overwhelming power, and Zoro's response is basically, "You got this, right? Cool, just checking."
It's the ultimate confidence. He knows Luffy has this. He's just offering out of courtesy. It speaks volumes about the battles they've already been through together. He saw Luffy take down Morgan. He saw him stand up to Buggy. He saw him defeat Kuro. He has a perfect track record in Zoro's eyes. This isn't a question of if Luffy can win, but just a polite check-in. It's the kind of quiet support that defines their relationship.
And Luffy's response is just as good. "No need, I can handle it." The trust between them is already so solid. It's not a crew, it's a unit. Usopp, on the other hand, is losing his mind, as he should be. He's our surrogate. He's the one reacting the way any normal person would, with pure, unadulterated terror. He's looking at the math, and the math says they are all about to die.
Krieg, of course, just laughs. He sees a tiny boat and a crew of 3. He can't comprehend the threat. To him, power is measured in numbers. Ships, men, cannons. He sees Luffy's crew and registers it as a 0. He doesn't understand that in this world, will and ambition are quantifiable forces of their own.
So he tries to scare Luffy. He drops the numbers. 50 ships, over 5,000 men, an entire armada. Let's pause on that. 50 ships. I build one ship at a time, and it's a massive undertaking. To command a fleet of 50? That's a small navy. We're talking logistics, command structures, provisions. This wasn't just a pirate crew. It was an invading army. And he says they were completely wiped out in just 7 days on the Grand Line.
That number is staggering. It's not a defeat, it's an erasure. An entire fleet just vanished. And Krieg's only takeaway is he needs a better map. It's such a failure of perspective. He experienced a force of nature, a cataclysmic event, and he thinks the solution is better preparation, like bringing a better umbrella for a hurricane.
That's the difference between him and Luffy. Luffy would hear that and get excited about the challenge. His eyes would turn into stars. A sea that can destroy 5,000 men? I gotta see this. Krieg heard it, saw it, lived it, and his only thought was how to avoid it next time. That's why he'll never be king. The king of the pirates has to be the one who conquers that sea, not the one who finds a way around it.
You see Zoro's expression change at the mention of this. He's not scared like Usopp. He's intrigued. He hears about a force that can take down 5,000 men and leans in. You can see the gears turning in his head. What kind of power exists in the world that can do that? For a man whose entire life is dedicated to becoming the strongest, this isn't a horror story, it's a benchmark. He's just learned how high the mountain he wants to climb actually is.
But before the fight can pop off, Krieg changes tactics. He demands food for his starving crewmates waiting outside.
And the Baratie cooks, full of righteous anger, absolutely refuse. They're not going to feed the man who just threatened to kill them and steal their home. It's a completely understandable reaction. You want to take everything from us? Fine, starve. It's a primal, defensive response.
But Zeff isn't one of them. In a moment that shocks everyone, Zeff agrees. He tells the cooks to prepare the food and give it to Krieg. He overruled his entire staff, his entire family, to uphold a principle.
This is the core of who he and Sanji are. It's the unbreakable rule of the sea cook. If someone is hungry, you feed them. Enemy, friend, pirate, marine, it doesn't matter. Starvation is the true enemy. To Zeff, allowing someone to starve when you have the means to prevent it is a greater sin than any act of piracy. It's a sacred law that transcends the immediate conflict.
It's gotta be so hard for the other cooks to watch. They see it as a betrayal, siding with the enemy, and siding with Sanji, the guy they think is nothing but trouble, who just did the exact same thing for Jin. In their eyes, Zeff is choosing his weird, blonde surrogate son and their strange code over the safety and honor of the restaurant.
Krieg takes the food and leaves, but not before giving them an ultimatum. Hand over the log and the ship or die. Simple as that. The act of kindness has not changed his objective one bit.
Jin stays behind for a moment, and he looks wrecked. He apologizes to Sanji, claiming ignorance, but he's clearly torn apart by what's happening. He is a man of honor, trapped under the command of a man with none. He respects Sanji immensely, but his loyalty is to his captain. You can already see the devastating conflict brewing inside him.
Zeff just dismisses it. He understands. He's been a captain. He knows the bonds of loyalty. But the other cooks don't. They immediately turn on Zeff, accusing him of siding with Sanji against the restaurant. The tension is at its absolute peak.
Until Patty, the head chef, steps up and shuts them all down with one question. He asks if any of them have ever truly experienced starvation.
And that's it. Silence. They haven't, but it's obvious from this exchange that Zeff and Sanji have. There's a shared history there, a trauma that the others can't comprehend, and it explains everything about their code. It's not an abstract philosophical principle for them. It's a deeply personal law written into their very beings by unimaginable suffering. That one question reframes everything. Their actions aren't weakness. They are the result of a profound strength forged in the worst possible circumstances. The chapter title, Don't Die, clicks into place. It's their mantra.
That one question just galvanizes the entire restaurant. The argument stops. They understand. Maybe not the specifics, but they understand the gravity of it. They're left with a choice: run or fight for their home, and they all decide to fight. They're not just cooks, they're the guardians of the Baratie. It's the place that took them all in. It's Zeff's legacy, and they're going to defend it.
Meanwhile, Jin is trying to talk them out of it. He knows how powerful Krieg is. He's seen it. He's pleading with them, trying to save them from a battle he knows they can't win. This is his way of repaying Sanji's kindness by trying to prevent the fight from ever happening.
But Sanji just lays it out for him, cold as ice. He'll feed anyone who's hungry. The enemies of the Baratie are now fed, so he will not hesitate to fight them. The debt is paid. The compassion ends where the threat to his family begins.
It's such a clear, principled stance. The compassion has a hard line, and Krieg just crossed it. Sanji can separate the act of feeding a starving man from the act of defending his home. The first is a universal duty. The second is a personal one. Now that the first is complete, he is fully committed to the second.
Back at the table, Luffy is just vibing, completely unbothered by the impending war. He turns to his crewmates and asks if they also think Sanji is cool, trying to get their approval for his next crew member. Classic Luffy. In the middle of all this life-or-death tension, he's on a recruitment mission.
Usopp is, of course, far too terrified to even consider recruitment right now. He's just thinking about the 5,000 men. He is still stuck on the horror story, unable to process anything. Luffy sees a cool new friend. Usopp sees a tombstone.
So Luffy, ever curious, turns to Jin. He wants to know what happened out there. What could possibly take out a fleet that large? He's not asking out of fear. He's asking with genuine, almost academic curiosity.
And this is where the chapter just ascends. Jin starts talking about the Grand Line, not as a place, but as a force, a fierce, terrifying ocean. He's trembling as he says it. This isn't just a story he heard, it's a memory that's seared into his mind. And he confirms it wasn't a storm or a sea king that got them.
He says they were almost annihilated by just one man.
The whole restaurant goes silent. You could hear a pin drop. One man against 5,000. It's an impossible thought. It breaks all known logic of combat. It sounds like a fairy tale, a myth.
He continues, his voice shaking. He says it happened on their 7th day. A single man with the eyes of a hawk appeared.
And when he says the name Dracule Mihawk, the camera, so to speak, just pushes in on Zoro.
His eyes go wide. He's not intrigued anymore. He's alarmed. He's completely locked in. The name hits him like a physical blow. You can see it on his face. This isn't just a name to him. It's the name. The name that has defined his entire existence since his promise to Kunia.
Okay, but think about what this means. The entire setup for this arc has been about Krieg, the powerful pirate from the Grand Line. He's been presented as the main antagonist, the big boss. His power, his fleet, his reputation, it was all meant to establish him as the greatest threat our crew has faced yet.
But in one sentence, Oda just revealed that Krieg isn't the threat. He's the victim. He's the guy who ran away from the real threat. The final boss of this arc isn't even the guy we've been fighting. The guy we've been fighting is just the appetizer's leftovers. It's a masterful narrative bait and switch.
The person Zoro has been searching for his entire life, the ultimate goal of his journey, the world's greatest swordsman, is the monster in this story. He's not some far-off dream on a distant island. He's right here. He's the reason any of this is happening. The entire plot of the Baratie arc is a direct consequence of Mihawk's actions. He is the unseen hand that has pushed all these pieces onto the board.
Oda's been building Zoro's dream since chapter 2. We know he needs to defeat this one man. It's been the foundation of his character. And now that man's shadow is falling over the entire East Blue. He didn't just defeat Krieg's fleet, he broke them so completely that the survivors fled all the way back to the weakest sea. He didn't just sink their ships, he sank their spirits.
It retroactively recontextualizes everything. Krieg's arrogance isn't just arrogance, it's a defense mechanism, it's posturing. He's terrified. He's trying to convince himself he can win with a logbook because the alternative, facing a power like Mihawk again, is unthinkable. He's puffing out his chest and acting like the biggest fish in the pond because he just got chased out of the ocean by a leviathan.
Super impactful. That reveal is just perfect. It completely flips the stakes of the arc on its head. This isn't about getting a cook anymore. It's not even about saving the Baratie, really. It's about a collision of destinies. Zoro's destiny just sailed into Luffy's adventure.
And what does this do to Zoro? He just heard that his end goal, the pinnacle of swordsmanship, is powerful enough to single-handedly destroy an armada. Does that inspire him? Does it terrify him? Look at his face in that panel. It's a complex cocktail of emotions. It's shock, it's recognition, and beneath it all, there has to be a terrifying thrill. The thing he has sought for so long is not only real, but more formidable than he could have possibly imagined.
Knowing Zoro, it's both, but the inspiration is gonna win out. He's not Usopp. He sees an impossible wall and immediately starts looking for a way to climb it. This is the moment he realizes just how far he has to go. The gap between strongest swordsman in the East Blue and world's greatest swordsman is not a gap, it's a chasm, and he just saw the shadow of the man standing on the other side.
It's brilliant. The world of One Piece just got infinitely larger and more dangerous in a single name drop. Mihawk is our first real glimpse of the endgame. Not just a title, but a force of nature in human form.
Whew, what a chapter. Let us know in the comments what you think went through Zoro's head in that exact moment. And drop a like if your jaw was on the floor right next to Usopp's.
So, predictions for Chapter 49. Where do we go from here?
Okay, I've got two. First, the obvious one feels like a fake out. I don't think we're fighting Krieg's men next. I think Mihawk is here. He followed them. Why would he let the flagship escape? He's coming to finish the job, and he's going to walk right into the Baratie. The real fight is next, and it's going to be Zoro's. Oda didn't drop that name just for exposition.
Someone that powerful appearing in the East Blue, that would be a statement. It would completely shatter the balance of power in this sea. I like it.
Second, I think Sanji is done being neutral. His debt is paid, Krieg's men are fed, now they're threatening his home and his father figure. Sanji is going to be the first one to throw a punch, and he is absolutely going to clean house against Krieg's rank-and-file pirates. We're about to see what he can really do. We've seen him kick, but we haven't seen him fight.
All right, my turn. My first prediction is that we're finally going to get the real story of Zeff and Sanji's past. Krieg's version is a bully's interpretation. Patty's question about starvation opened the door. I think we're going to learn that Zeff didn't lose his leg to save himself. He lost it to save Sanji. It was an act of sacrifice, and it's the source of their bond and their shared trauma about starvation. That's why Zeff is so hard on him, and why Sanji can never truly leave.
Oh, that would be heavy. That makes so much sense with the unbreakable code they share. It wasn't a choice, it was a lesson paid for in blood.
Second, I think Jin is going to be the emotional core of this fight. He's trapped. He owes his life to Sanji, but his loyalty is to Captain Krieg. I predict Krieg will order Jin to fight Sanji, and that will be the first major battle. A fight between two men who deeply respect each other but are on opposite sides. It won't be about good versus evil, but loyalty versus morality. A battle for Jin's soul.
Bro, that's good. A real gut punch of a fight. You can't even root against Jin.
And for my last one, building on yours, I don't think Zoro is just going to wait for Mihawk to show up. I think he is going to walk out of that restaurant, find a small boat, and go looking for him. He's not a passive character. He just heard his lifelong rival is in the neighborhood. He's going to actively seek out that confrontation, whether he's ready or not. The information is a challenge, and Zoro has never backed down from a challenge in his life.
That is so Zoro. He's absolutely that reckless. He has to know. He has to measure himself against the best right now. Okay, I can see all of that happening. This is going to get intense.
I think so too. We'll find out next time.